development is civil servants who are civil, public servants who are servants, leaders that stay on their feet till their people are seated, presidents that listen to questions without irritation. Development is not politics. Like Sola for power and forests for deserts, like drilling for oil without hurting the mangroves, like the extinction of polio, a world without end where the girl is a student and not a young mother, like lions and lambs, supermarkets, street markets, big business, small people, big people, not Boko Haram, that makes my destruction the prerequisite for its own expansion, like farmers and herders, like eagles and hawks. Development is to coexist.
Good evening and welcome to The Conversation. I'm Sola Adesoye, your host of The Conversation, and it's good to come into your space and to have you engage this exciting and mind-transforming program. If you've been a part of the conversation ever since we began, I'm sure that you know that it has been a huge meeting and broadcast that has impacted your life greatly. And so here we are again for another conversation. And trust me, this conversation promises to be impactful as well. We're looking at power, unity, and peace, the roadmap for a new Nigeria or to a new Nigeria. And I don't know, but I want you to just, buckle up and get ready. This is the time when you share the link with your friends so that we can bring other people into the space and get them to engage and to hear all that would be said on tonight's conversation. So do that right now. Click the share button. You can copy it and share it in your WhatsApp broadcast list and get as many people on board this conversation as you can. Again, tonight is really loaded. I have a special guest in the house, and is one that is known by many. And for those who know him, you already know the stuff that he's made of. But to those who don't, let me introduce to you our guest. Our guest is none other than DK Chukwumerije. DK Chukwumerije is a Nigerian spoken word and performance poetry artist. He's an award-winning author, and he's a graduate of law and has authored 8 books. He's the host of the annual Night of the Spoken Word Performance Poetry event. And here he is in the studio with us today. Well, welcome to the conversation, DK.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you.
It is good to have you here. And I mean, we've known each other for quite a while now. We've done events together and I've been at, your events as well. And honestly, you are a blessing. You're unique. You have your own space. And I think that is worth celebrating.
Thank you.
So we'll begin let me begin by asking this question. How does a law graduate transform into poetry? I mean, I don't get that. Was it was it innate, born in you, or did you just find your path?
Honestly, I think the more appropriate question would be, how does a poet end up as a lawyer?
That's an interesting
because
twist.
I discovered the gift of writing poetry early.
Wow.
My father was a journalist, and so I grew up around books. My mother is a fantastic storyteller. My elder brother is a poet, and at a young age, he was my hero, and I just wanted to be like him.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, my first poems were essentially me copying his poems into my exercise book.
Interesting.
And I got a very early lesson in plagiarism or what it means. Or what it means. You see, and but I ended up in law because, like most, I come from a typical African family, and you know that in most typical African families, there are only four things a child can be. You can either be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or a disgrace to your family. A disgrace to your family. So, you know, when I told my dad I wanted to read, I can't remember what I told him I wanted to read. He said, "No way.
No way, not in this house."
He said, let me see what subjects you've done." And he said, you know, when did you drop all these science courses? The plan was for you to become a doctor. And I said, I just, you know, it wasn't that I was bad in chemistry or biology, but it's just not what I wanted to do.
Just wasn't there for you.
So he said, man, well, you're not beyond redemption from your courses. You can still read law. And so law it shall be.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how I ended up reading law. But poetry, I discovered early, and it stayed with me. I wrote poems as a child, as a teenager, to deal with the pressures of growing up, to deal with the peer pressure, falling in love, broken hearts.
Oh, wow.
You know, that was how I kept a diary. I've always been a very introverted person. So writing was my way of dealing with these pressures, you know, and I never thought in my wildest dreams that it was a career or something you could do. You know, no teacher ever said to me, you know, poetry is something useful.
You can build,
you know, it's just
career out of.
In fact, I used to get mocked in secondary school because I went to an all-boys secondary school, and there was a sense that poetry was a bit feminine. You know, it's a girly kind of thing. You know. So it's a natural gift, and I've kept it all my life, and I'm happy that I did.
That is amazing. I mean, really amazing. Now, there's so much you've said in just this space of time. So I'd want to ask you, looking back at what your father did. So he's looking at your subjects and he says, probably this is the only thing you can study. Do you find that as the hand of providence somehow? Do you see, you know, that role he played guiding you as being significant to everything that you are today?
Yes, I am absolutely grateful that he got me to read law because he also recognized that I had other abilities, not just the creative ability, but I also had intellectual abilities. And that was probably what he was focused on. And for the sort of life or the sort of calling or roles I found myself playing now, my study of law is absolutely invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. In that, if there is one of the traditional courses I could have studied, someone like me, it would have been law. You know, because law is not that far removed from literature anyway.
Yeah.
You know, when you're spending I like stories. I never had problems reading up my cases and things like. I used to love reading the stories, and I was always more interested in the background to the judgment, the facts, the stories, the names, what happened. So I actually enjoyed reading law. I graduated as the best student in my class. It wasn't a chore. It wasn't difficult. You know, my sort of my skill set, you know, also suits the legal profession. I could be a lawyer easily. You know, so yes, I think my dad, and he was also right. You know, you have to be pragmatic in a society like Nigeria. I often tell young people now that yes, it's good to follow your heart, but follow your heart with your head.
Oh, wow.
You know, you need to eat, you need to pay your rent. And you find that if you can't cover these basic costs, you know, a lot of these things you romanticize are going to quickly lose their shine. You know, you have to cover your basics. And it was something my father also taught me. He said, you have to cover your basics. That if you really want to fulfill your purpose in life, then the first thing you need to find is economic independence. You need to be able to stand on your own feet. And in a society like Nigeria, the way it is, it helps to have a pragmatic skill that you can use. Everybody has wilderness years where whatever you're pursuing, it doesn't look like it's coming through. It doesn't mean you should quit it, but you need something to tide you over in those times. And having a pragmatic skill, you know, that can bring money into your account is crucial.
You know, you're taking me to biblical days and Jewish culture. that no matter who you were going to become, you had to have a skill.
Yeah.
So Jesus was a carpenter,
Yeah.
but he wasn't going to be a carpenter all his life.
Yeah.
And the essence of carpentry was to provide for his family.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, what you're saying is, thank God for your dad.
Yeah.
You know, I say that because not many parents are that safer guide, you know, for their children and able to guide them. And sometimes you can't blame them. It's probably the fact that they're not as knowledgeable and exposed as well and understand, you know, the fundamentals of life. But, you know, if we then take that and we superimpose it upon the Nigerian template, I don't have the statistics, but, you know, we all know that there are a lot of young people who are out of work. And so you've gone to university, you've read political science, and you can't fit into the political landscape. You've studied, you know, journalism, and you're struggling with probably, you know, finding true expression, you know, in the field of journalism and all kinds of things. And so don't you think, you know, following that we need to revisit our education policy and probably focus on vocational skills as, you know, as part of, you know, youth development program for the nation, because that's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head that we need to have an educational system that is focused on the needs of society. And that the important thing, again, it's a philosophy I got from home, from my mother in particular. She would always say, you know, you need to add value to society. There has to be a problem that you can solve, and that's how you add value. And so I feel that the educational system should be geared towards creating people that can add value. You know, what are the needs? What does the Nigerian society need today and going forward? You know, so there's no point us studying things that are really not needed in society. You know, even though there is a place for knowledge's sake, you know, it has a place in every civilization. But at the same time, we have to focus on the nuts and bolts of our own civilization and what we're trying to build. You know, and one of my regrets is that I didn't even pick up more practical skills. I wish I had picked up things like plumbing, you know, being able to fix your electrics, you know, carpentry. Because again, you had in Nigeria this false dichotomy that, you know, these are lowly jobs. You know, you look down on these jobs. But then you realize that there is always a need for a carpenter, a mechanic, an electrician, a plumber. And these are things that you can do, and there is dignity in labor. It's something I believe that we also need to come to terms with in Nigeria. There is dignity in labor. It doesn't matter what you do. There's nothing like lowly work, as long as it's honest and it feeds your family. I always get inspired. I grew up in Lagos. See these women selling pepper, roasting corn by the road, and they're sending their children to university with them. I mean, what she is doing is more honorable than somebody that is sitting in some fancy office stealing billions and stealing millions. You know, so I believe in honest work, you know, and I honestly believe in work where you roll up your sleeves and you get your hand dirty. I wish I had been exposed to more of that. Let me share a funny story. I wanted to drop out of secondary school.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I told my mother that I wanted to become a mechanic.
To become a mechanic
at the top of our road. I said I wanted to become his apprentice. We're living in Lagos then. My mother she said, what has come upon me? I remember she drove me out of the house and said, you had better go back to school. I'm grateful that she sent me back to school, but I wish that I had been allowed to pick up that skill. You know, I think it's having these skills are invaluable.
I mean, that's solid. In the Western world, do it yourself. The DIY culture is a significant one. And it's the fact that, yes, for major faults, electrical faults, you probably need an electrician, but there are minor things you can do. And those skill sets end up being valuable. And you never can tell where you find yourself. And it's what you've learned that lots of people would call, you know, menial and all of that would even help you to survive. You know, you've said so much. You've talked about dignity in labor. And I don't know how Nigerian youth would respond to that statement. Because today, the people who are celebrated are those who have either stolen money, and we're having a culture where they tell you that the end justifies the means, and nobody really thinks about the process, the dignity. People are even being mocked for being overly righteous and overly right and keeping to integrity in different facets of life. Now, so what would you say to young people? It's a challenge lots of young people are having. And there are people who are going to tell you, well, look, who honesty help? But yet we know these are foundations. I mean, your heritage obviously has those as foundations. I mean, there was a time when, just like you're saying, the pepper seller, who's content and is saying, look, I can send my children to school and I'm happy where I am.
Yeah.
You know, so to young people, I don't know what you're gonna, what encouragement, what to say, you know, what booster they can receive, you know, that hinges on the dignity of labor.
You know, it's always tough, you know, when you try and engage with this question, because people look at you as coming from a privileged position and you can afford to say these things. But the truth is the truth. You know, there are certain values upon which civilizations are built. And it's not even about being spiritual or being a Christian. Honesty reduces the cost of doing business. Integrity reduces the cost of doing business in an economy. The fact that, you know, you can sign a contract with someone and you're 70% sure that the contract will be executed, it makes everything cheaper for you. Do you understand? And so these are values that we need to hold on to, that sometimes it is better to be honest and maintain a modest lifestyle than to be rich and lose that integrity. Because integrity is an asset. It's an asset that pays back in different ways. I mean, having a good name opens doors for you. It can protect you. You know, it can, there's so many things it can do for you. And I think it's really about young people having role models, having people who are able to say, you know what, I'm lower middle income, but I'm okay. You know, I'm fine just having this secondhand car, being able to send my children to school. It's not that I cannot do more to get money, but I will not do more to get money. For people to begin to say this and say, I'm happy where I am. You know, I'm blessed. I know that I come from a privileged background and I'm blessed. Even though if you interrogate my life, you'll find that there are seasons where there was no food in the house, but there was laughter, there was love, there was joy. And these things matter. They can tide you through difficult times in your life. And the greatest thing, you know, my parents have left me is just that, knowing that there are certain things I will not do. And I will not starve, because I was also left with a strong faith that there is a God. You know, and I'm not even being spiritual. And there is a God. I will not starve. I may not become a millionaire. I may remain a nobody, but I am keeping that flame of integrity alive. Its time and its season will come. You know, so, you know, there is this sense that sometimes you're in a time of darkness where the wrong things seem to be winning everywhere. And the good people just need to survive that period. Time. You just need to survive. And you need to understand that we're in that space in Nigeria today where we need to survive, where we need to keep honesty alive, where we need to keep integrity alive, because those who will benefit from it are coming in the future. You know, if you have a long-term view, if you see yourself as one leg in a relay race, it's easier for you to take the sacrifices that have come upon your generation, knowing that you are bending down so that the next generation can step on you and move ahead. So that's how I see it. And this is how I always engage with young people. Don't be in, like what I was saying about following your heart. Sometimes I meet young people and I tell them, it may be that you're in a situation where you're the first person in your family that is sort of lifting up their head. You don't have that much luxury to experiment or follow your heart. You have to lay foundation.
Oh my goodness.
Those that lay foundations that don't have that much luxury, to, you know, but you lay the foundation so that your children can have options.
So you need to understand your place in the chain of events. Once you understand your purpose, it's easy to make the sacrifices that come with that space. And the same thing applies for Nigeria. As a generation, we need to understand our place in Nigeria's evolution. Nigeria is not yet, we can't eat from Nigeria. We need to feed Nigeria. We need to build
Make
Nigeria
sacrifices for
so that people in future can eat from Nigeria, can be proud of Nigeria. So if you understand your purpose, you don't complain that the country is bad. That is why you were born, to fix it, you know? And this is how I see it, and it always motivates me. It keeps my own spirit going.
Wow. Well, if you're just joining us, DK is in the house, and honestly, you're creating all kinds of pathways today. I mean, some of the things that have been said are what I call sailor moments. You just need to pause and think about it, knowing where you fit in the chain of things and in the evolution of whether it's your family or it's your nation makes a world of difference. And honestly, that is a blessing. And I'm sure those who are watching us are really like wowing right now. For me, that statement is loaded. If one looks at, for example, the patriarchs in scripture, each one had their place. Abraham was a template upon which, you know, people like Isaac and Jacob would build. And just like you said, in the family, if you're the first, there's sacrifices you've got to make. You don't have that leverage, that option. You can't over-experiment because there are people who are coming after you who need to climb on your shoulders. That is truly awesome. Thank you for sharing this.
Thank you, sir.
You know, let's move a bit so that we can, you know, navigate accurately into our theme. And the next question will be, how did activism fuse into this? Because so you were first a poet from your youth, and so that gift was identified, and then you went into law and you shared how you got in. So what about activism? Because there are lots of lawyers who do some kind of poetry, but theirs is not focused. They write love stories and all kinds of things. So how did that happen? Would you say it was innate, or circumstances kind of caused that evolution or transition?
I guess like many things in life, it's a bit of both. You know, again, I had the good fortune of being born into a family, you know, when, you know, my dad was a journalist and then became a politician, you know, and he had all these political books and biographies. So I was sort of born into a context where having a social consciousness was just part of life. And again, I was raised to believe that you have to contribute to your community. You have to give back to your community. That it's not okay to just focus on yourself and your family. You have to be contributing value to the wider community. But again, there are many people who are born into that context, and it's just doesn't vibrate within them. But for me, it made a lot of sense. I've always had a deep love, you know, for my country. Always. I don't know where it came from. When I go back and I look at my early poems, I see just a longing for development, a longing for progress. From an early age, I have been writing about it. And I never consciously said, I'm going into activism. I've always just expressed that longing to have a better country. In fact, I remember a pivotal period in my life. I was reading law and I was in my 4th year in school, and the people were beginning to think about what are you going to specialize in? And the most lucrative area was corporate law. There's a lot of money in it and things like that. And I had said, okay, I'm going to go into corporate practice because I didn't really want to go to court. I just go into corporate practice. But then we took this course in my 4th year. I'll never forget, Third World and Dependency. And the course was about development. Why are certain countries first world and third world? And as I took that course, it was like, wow, this is what I am about. And it completely shifted my career path. I ended up, instead of doing a master's in corporate law, I did a master's in law and development. And because it just opened, it's like you touch something and you realize that this is what I really care about. This is what I'm really passionate about. I did the master's, and we just talked about when you do a course that doesn't have any commercial value. At the time, it had no commercial. I couldn't get a job with that master's. I still had to go get a regular job with my regular skills, but that was my passion. And I held on to it, and I kept developing my ability to speak in that area. And then I realized that I have this gift of poetry, this gift of articulation, and then I have this passion for development, and I wanted to bring them together. Because I also felt that one of the things that was missing in the Nigerian space was the ability to inspire followership simply by the quality of your ideas. Not because I'm giving you money, not because I come from the same tribe as you or the same ethnicity as you, but because you listen to me and I articulate values that resonate within you. To be able to develop followership is the foundation of sort of an ideological type of politics, which is what Nigeria needs to evolve into. So I recognize it as a need that I could meet because I had the gift of articulation and speaking. And so I consciously began to use my gift. Before, sort of when I came on the scene, most poets were talking about the sunset and flowers and broken hearts. And I very consciously began to use my gift to speak to the nation. Very, very consciously, because I had studied it at master's level, and I felt that there are many missing gaps, but one that I'm uniquely placed to feel is this need to articulate and to awaken a national consciousness in people using your words.
And you're doing such an excellent job at it too, and I'm sure our guests who, our viewers who are watching can say the same. Now, in one of your popular poems, which is "The Revolution Has No Tribe," you call for us to see beyond language barriers and ethnic colorations. Is this truly achievable?
Yes, it is truly achievable. It may take time, but it is achievable. It's possible to rise above ethnic divides. It's happened before. I mean, it's even happened here. Today we have an ethnic group that identifies as Kanuri. But if you trace its background, you find that it's an amalgam of various ethnic identities that existed before and have now become Kanuri. So you evolve. Culture is not static, it's dynamic. Even now in our country, it's very normal to refer to Hausa Fulani as if it's one group.
Exactly.
Again, that's an example of cultural evolution. So it's possible for identities to merge. It's possible for that organic evolution to take place. It just takes leadership. It takes people living side by side, interacting, intermarrying over time, but it also takes leadership, to continue to articulate a higher umbrella identity. I mean, you also have the American identity. Again, a mishmash of people from everybody.
Everywhere.
Everywhere you look, it's actually the same. Sometimes I have this debate with people who tell me, the French are a nation. I said, if you look at the history of the French, you find that it's many different ethnic groups that now assume the umbrella of the French, the English. Wherever you look, you find that cultures evolve, because that's just the way it is. The culture is not static, it evolves. We're not created outside Igbo. That's not how God created you as a human being. Your culture is your own personal expression as you interact with your environment. So as your environment changes, as your interactions change, your cultural persona will change if you let it. Tribalism is a different thing. Tribalism is almost an artificial adherence, artificially saying that we will not change. This is where we will be. Tribalism is not natural because you cling onto the identity intellectually. There are people who are Igbo, they were born in Lagos and grew up in Lagos. And if they don't think about it and you ask them who they are, it will be a very Lagos-centric identity.
Lagosians.
But then tribalism kicks in and you say, no, where am I from? And then you intellectually have to trace it back and hold on to that identity, even though organically you've actually moved a bit beyond that identity. So that's the tribalism that I find that is hurtful, is negative, where you're not really being true to your own self, to the diversity and evolution within you. So you're very artificially like a masquerade. You come out wearing a mask. I'm a Yoruba man, I'm an Igbo man, that is what I am. But behind it's not true.
You're not.
It's not true.
In the way you live and the essence of your life doesn't reflect
It doesn't reflect
what
it,
you're claiming, to be.
So I believe it's very possible
Hmm.
for us to evolve beyond ethnic.
Okay, so a book I read several years ago is titled The Black Man's Burden.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting when we take that and we fit it within the space of Nigeria. So let's look at Nigeria and the trajectory. It does appear as if from 2015 till now, we're more divided.
Yeah.
Values are eroded even deeper, and issues of tribalism and all of these things, because you talked about leadership.
Yeah.
And so it looks like we are on a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
How can we arrest this? At what point will we? Because we've been on this journey for a while now.
Yeah.
And it appears like things are getting worse and not better.
Yeah.
So, when we're looking at leadership and body language and leadership decisions and all of that, it's easy to say, okay, let's get a new leader. Would that be a solution if there's a leadership change?
We need a new culture of leadership.
A new culture of leadership, much more than
we need
a new leader.
A new approach to these issues. Nigeria's problems are not peculiar, and they are not unsolvable at all. They're actually they're very easy to manage. And some of the key solutions to the issues we face today, we don't even need to invent them. They've already been invented. Remember that we've been independent for 60 years, yes, but we've been a nation for over 100 years.
Yes.
So we have a long history of different interest groups and different tribes talking to each other and trying to find a way to live together.
Mm-hmm.
And we have many policies and ideologies and ways of doing things that have been evolved over time. And there are three that are very germane to the Nigerian state. One is the fact that Nigeria has to be a federal state, something that was settled on very early in our evolution as a nation. That because we have different ethnic and identity groups,
yes,
it's important that we're a federal system. Nobody really quarrels with that today. The second thing is that we must run an inclusive type of government. This is a cardinal principle of the Nigerian state. Because we're a diverse society, we don't have the luxury of simply saying, let's allocate resources purely on the basis of merit. Because if you allocate resources purely on the basis of merit and an entire ethnic or religious group is excluded, you're going to have a problem.
Yes.
So whatever you do, you have to find a way of accommodating everybody. You have to balance the need to be meritocratic with the need to be representative, because we are diverse. Now, that principle is the one that is being sort of neglected by today's government. Simply taking it for granted. I mean, what's the big deal? It's a big deal. If you neglect the need to be representative in a diverse society, you're going to have a violent reaction, pushback, which is all that is happening. And I can assure you that the tensions will immediately drop significantly the moment you have a government that understands and accepts that, yes, we need to be inclusive. Whether I like you or not is not the issue. As long as you are a party in this room, we're going to find a way to make you feel that you are part of this thing. And it's easy to do. It's in your body language, it's in the way you talk, it's in the way you create space for others. That's the second cardinal principle of the Nigerian state. I think that's the one that this government just needs to take on board. They can do it tomorrow and the tensions will drop. It just takes one broadcast by the president that just has a different tone to it, that just has a sense of, I understand. When you keep saying, I don't understand why you are, that alienates someone. But the moment you say, I understand, and we're going to find a way to carry all of us.
But in his inauguration address, he said, I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody. So, I think I'm getting it right. Wouldn't you say that's kind of all-inclusive, or what we're seeing is totally,
Unfortunately, the lips said one thing, the body
language
said
and
something
all of that.
else, and really that's the key issue. Honestly, that's all. The country is having a very intense reaction to this particular government, which is why I also try and calm people down that we cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater. So the fact that you are deeply discontented with this particular government does not mean that you should wreck the entire country. There is a lot of potential in the country. Do you understand? We can't
Tear
do that.
down.
It is better for us to. It's like if somebody is holding something that is precious to you, maybe you have a man who is holding your child by the throat. You're trying to get your child out of the grip of that man. You're not just going to start firing indiscriminately because you don't want to kill your child while you're trying to liberate the child. So really, the objective is to take the state out of the hands of people who don't understand the need for Nigeria to be an inclusive space. That's all.
Take the state out of the hands of such people.
Yeah.
We'll come to that because we've got to see how that can be done. And I think there are different pathways. Well, we're taking a short break right now. I'm sure that this one is really one that's stirring a lot of thought, and at least showing you a pathway out of this quagmire that we're in. This is DK Chukwumerije and Sola Adesoye on the set of the conversation. We'll be right back in just a short while. Don't change that dial.
So much happens in police cells because there's no journalist in there. It's not a public space. They do it because they know that they are not under any doubt that they won't get away with it. Minors in police cell, minors in prison, as long as you have money, you have power, and the media is not spotlighting your case, you don't get to experience the full weight of the law. If it ever catches up with you, it's just mild. The day I was remanded in prison, they didn't know I was a journalist. A lawyer in that court was waiting for me to pay bribes, and he told me that I would sleep in my house that night. After the magistrate had given an order for me to be remanded in prison. Look at our political space. Governors come in, they don't work more than 2 years. The third year, they're already calculating. 2 years is even too long. Second year, they're already calculating. There is a godfather somewhere that I must not offend. There is also and so person. And then they're always distracted by politics. Governance is always distracted by politics in this. But that's always the problem. If you manage to get the right people into the right positions, change can indeed happen. I believe it.
The conversation keeps you in touch with the realities of life, links you with the greatest minds around the world, and leaves you better off than when you joined it. Don't miss it for anything. Join the conversation bi-monthly on the social media channels showing on your screen.
Well, we're back from the short break. And honestly, I just can't wait to get back into this conversation with DK Chukwumerije, our guest here on the set of the conversation. And we want to ask, if you've got questions relating to things you've heard today, you know what to do. Just type it into the social media platform, if it's YouTube, if it's Facebook, and it comes straight to us in the studio, and we'll be able to get to address those questions that you have put forward. So back to you, DK. I mean, that was such a huge, deep insight that you've given. Now, I said I was coming back to snatching the baby away from the one who's threatening the life of the baby. So there are different pathways. And SARS, before NSAS, the president did say in his recent broadcast, when he was being asked about NSAS, he made an allusion to those who are willing to drive me out. I mean, I'm not using the word verbatim, but in his own estimation, NSAS was about kicking him out. And that sent all kinds of ripples out there. So there's Omoyele Sowore has been calling for revolution now. and all of that. Do you think, or what do you think will work for us? Or do we wait until 2023? Because the way things are, to be honest with you, and this may be my opinion, and I think it's a shared opinion, that 2023 is far.
Mhm.
And so how do we follow the same political process, or do we come to do we aggregate our efforts together and say, look, the government must listen to us. If not, we're not shifting from here, and get them to understand the urgency of our pain and how and why things need to shift from this point. So I don't know what you want to suggest as some credible, authentic pathway.
I think all options must stay on the table.
All options.
All options must remain on the table. I think the pathway of civil protest must continue to push forward, because there are issues that cannot wait. There are issues that have to be addressed today. You know, for instance, the loss of life, the insecurity across the country. Somebody is being killed today. Somebody is going
Right
to
now.
be killed tomorrow. You know, a family is going to be bereaved. These are things that need to be addressed now. That's one. Two, it's also important for us to begin to fight to create a culture where the government realizes that it's a servant of the people. You know, that there is nothing wrong with people demanding. There's nothing wrong with people not showing you respect or deference as a public servant. This is not a monarchy. This is not an authoritarian, regime. This is a democracy. So there's nothing wrong with not being shown deference. You can't get upset that people are not showing you deference, that people are not clapping enough for what you're doing. You know, it doesn't matter. You may be working for a cantankerous boss. You may be working for a boss that doesn't say thank you for what you do, and just, you work for your boss. So I think it's important to change that culture where the office of the citizen is recognized as the number one office in the land. Not the office of the president, not the office of the minister, but the office of the citizen. So when you still have a culture where people are using sirens, chasing people off the road, you keep people waiting for 2 hours, you come into the meeting, everybody's supposed to stand and clap. You get upset if somebody disagrees with you or says that's not the way it's supposed to be. And these are valid reasons why civil protest needs to continue until you get the point that, the people are the boss and you are not. But the political option is also the key pathway that must be explored. And it must be explored across all parties. This is not even an APC, PDP thing. This is about those who understand what it takes to make Nigeria work and those who don't, whatever party they may be in. And we must begin to create narratives that allow these kinds of people to be empowered in their spaces, wherever that may be. I say this because it's very easy for us to tar everybody in the government with the same brush. But we must understand that it is also a diverse government. And there are also elements within the government that understand what I am saying, that understand what you are saying, and may not be in the position to do it. But if the opportunity comes, will do it. And you must keep that in mind, that you also have friends on the inside. We also have people who are not necessarily bad, but just are not in the space to do what needs to be done. Sometimes when we speak, we also need to understand that. But then, like what you said, it's time for us to begin to aggregate towards 2023. We cannot say, oh, I give up, it can never, it's never going to work. Look, they fought for civil rights in the United States for over a century. It was a century of struggle. In South Africa, it was the same thing, a century of struggle. So you struggle until you have the society that you want. You can't abandon it and say, oh, I'm not going to do it again. 2023, we still have to come out and try and come out en masse, register, and make intelligent decisions about who you're voting. It matters. The mentality, the personality of that person matters much more than where they come from. What is their orientation? What do they think about human rights? What do they think about tolerance and empathy? What do they think about other ethnic groups and other religious groups. These things are what matters for that level of leadership.
Yeah.
You have to have, for Nigeria to work, you have to have someone who is comfortable with the different tongues, the different faiths, the different, ethnicities of Nigeria, who is very comfortable working with everybody. And the moment we begin to put people like that in office, who are also competent and understand how a modern economy works, you will see that within a space of, just like within a space of 5 years, we went from an okay space to a space where suddenly everybody is so discontented.
Yeah.
Within 4 or 5 years, you will see the difference as well. So I believe that all options must stay on the table. The civil protest must continue to move forward. But in the political space, we must make that effort to really begin to come together around a shared desire for a more inclusive and functional society. Not that when 2023 begins to draw near,
then
you will now remember that you are Northerner, you are Southerner, you are Igbo, you are Yoruba. Because these are the things that fragment the progressive movement.
Absolutely.
We suddenly remember that, I come from here, I come from there. But if for once we'll make a priority the conditions in our children's schools, the conditions in the public hospitals, the conditions on the roads that we share as Nigerians, if we make this the priority as we go forward, the state of insecurity in the country, the fact that why should anybody, any citizen of Nigeria feel like they don't belong to this country?
Yeah.
Why should it happen? If we put these things forward and make them first, then we will make the right choice as to who we put into office.
That's right.
And that will reflect in the outcomes.
That's right. Thank you for that. I just needed to get this quote out, and this is by Joe Biden, the president of the United States. And he said, "No fundamental social change occurs merely because government acts.
Yeah.
It's because civil society, the conscience of a country, begins to rise up and demand change."
Yeah.
And someone sent it to me today, and I find it really profound because, again, when we look at Nigeria, civil society itself has suffered a lot of damage. In other words, compromise has taken place. So today, the citizens don't even have faith in civil societies. And that's why the NSAS movement became what you call the hope of young people, to say at least our voice can be heard, our voice should be heard, our voice can be heard, and we were able to say something, and we got the government's attention. Unfortunately, we all know how it ended. And so fitting that into what you're saying, it's obvious, and I agree with you, that we must keep all the options open. And we must encourage young people who want to express themselves, but we also must say to them that they must organize rightly. And I think that's also very, very critical, that we need to synergize and organize rightly so that we can truly demand, like Joe Biden says, change. And that must be heard by those who lead us. The office of the citizen, is the number one office. And rightly, you've spoken that until we get, our leaders to see this, we still have a lot of work to do.
We need a group of leaders in there who are responsive to these things. It's not right for a leader to stay unresponsive to these growing agitations in society, to keep, to say, they don't know what they're talking about, their children. You have to listen to all the voices coming through out of society. And some of these voices have been consistent over the years. This is our problem. This is how we feel. You can't keep passing over it or ignoring it. As a leader, you have to engage with it. You have to engage.
Awesome. Let me take you to something, DK. And this is born out of one of your poems. Well, so it's 6 investments that could make Nigeria great. So I'd like to read it for everyone. This came out of the richness of DK's poetry and his understanding. So 6 investments that could make Nigeria great. Number one, invest in the infrastructure of integration. Number two, invest in the economics of integration, in the body language of integration, in stories on integration, in the morality of integration, in the politics of integration. Now, let me take one of these strands and just get you to express your views. When you wrote about the stories on integration, what's the context, and what do you really mean by stories on integration? I mean, we must identify integration. And you've been speaking about that. But stories on integration, can you give us some insight,
I was speaking essentially about how we use history. History is a powerful tool for nation building, and how we use history as a people. And today we use history in a very divisive way. We use history to maintain wounds and to maintain divisions. And so we're very selective in our use of history. So I gave the specific example of, you would hear, you'll be told stories, for instance, as a northerner, of how the Igbos killed the Sadaunan, and the Igbos cannot be trusted, but nobody ever tries to put that in context, that the coup was led by Major Kaduna and Zogu. There were other northerners, other people from other tribes in there, just to have that nuance that puts it in context. And you would never really hear about maybe the Igbos that had a different point of view, even at that time, to some of these dominant views. Those that said, okay, maybe we don't need to have a war, we can settle this peacefully. Those that said, you know what, I'm not going to fight this war. They always have this narrative, or this historical narrative, that make the ethnic group one person, that involves every member of that ethnic group. I told stories about, the war. You never hear stories about how, northern soldiers came into Biafra and were giving water to the children, giving food to the children, didn't carry out genocidal acts. These are not the stories that, that come true. You never hear stories of how, a Fulani man in the 50s was a mayor of Enugu. You don't hear those kind of stories coming true. You never hear stories of how, Igbo business people after the war, the friendships from members of other tribes that helped them to resuscitate their businesses, of going back to different towns and finding that in many towns, their neighbors had kept their properties allowed them to come back into it. You don't hear those stories. You would always hear the stories of how they stole the property, how they, and these stories are happening every day. Even today, there are so many inspiring stories of inter-ethnic, inter-religious friendships and collaborations and cooperations that make the country turn. But the narrative is so divisive. It doesn't actually reflect the reality. In reality, Nigerians coexist much better than the narrative would make you believe. And that's one of the reasons why people keep predicting Nigeria will break up and it will break, and it just seems to keep going on, because the narrative is more divisive than the reality. In reality, if you go into an average club or whatever in the evening, and they're playing a Champions League, you will see all of them outside Igbo, Yoruba, talking. If you go into our secondary schools, you see all of us mixed. Yoruba is sleeping on the top bunk bed, Igbo is on the down. They walk together to fetch water from the tap. They come back. Many times our tribal identities are constructed. They are political. They don't come from within us. If not for the political climate, if not for that form that always asks you, what is your state of origin? Where do you come from? You would find that many Nigerians just relate. Mix. I really learned I grew up in Lagos, which is a very cosmopolitan, context. And I really started learning about tribes in class, in secondary school. That was the first time I said, oh, so my best friend is from Borno, or this one is from Bauchi. That's when you start doing all these things, because society is now indoctrinating you. But when we're just growing up, in one compound, you come out, you play with Bayo, you could play with Usma. Nobody cares about these things. So the narrative is much more divisive than the reality. It's the opposite in places like America. where their narrative is very unifying. When you look, you see a lot of division. So they consciously use their words to bind. We, on the other hand, keep trying to tear apart something that is organically fusing together. It's happening organically and naturally. But we keep trying to use the future of our children to pay for the mistakes of our parents in the past. We keep trying to do this, and sometimes I tell people that, listen, for us to move forward, we need to forgive each other for the atrocities of the past. We need to draw a line. Forgive each other for the people killed in the January 15 coup, for the people killed in the July 29 coup, in the pogrom, in the war. We need to just forgive each other and draw a line. We cannot keep trying to refight those battles, finish those quarrels that our
open
parents,
up those wounds.
It's not going to lead anywhere. We have to draw a line. So these are what I mean. This is what I mean by the stories of integration, that you can tell different stories. I mean, I'm married to a woman from Edo State. Do you understand? Am I going to? So if there's a war between my state and her state,
are you splitting?
Where will my children how will they
go?
divide themselves? Where will they go? And there are stories like this all over the country. Somebody is from Lagos State, you marry somebody from my brother, his wife is from Adamawa. Where his children, how are you going to shape them? And love conquers all. That's the truth.
Amazingly. And that's why we see these intertribal marriages, and they're living peacefully because
it happens all the time.
They love each other, and
happens all the time. So these stories don't come out. They don't come out a lot in the narrative. My best friend is from Kaduna State. The first girl I ever dated is from Gombe State. When I write my personal history, the diversity of Nigeria is my story. So how can I deny my own story? How can I deny growing up in Lagos, doing my university in Abuja, traveling to Maiduguri for Nuga Games, going to Kaduna? How do you? I know that those childhood, those youthful memories, they form an important part of your personality.
That's right.
It becomes your store of nostalgia.
Exactly.
So if you are artificially divorced from those memories, you're almost like someone without a soul, without a heart, without, you're just an intellectual being. And that's what tribalism does for us. It tells us to sever connections with places that we do not come from. But how do you do that? How do you do that? So I believe that we need to invest in telling better stories, telling better stories. Of how we are friends, how we are married, how we are business partners across ethnic and religious lines every day, and we make it work. So why can't we make it work in the political space?
Oh my. What a conversation this one is. Right now, we're going to be taking some questions that have come up from some of our viewers. So the first question is coming up right now, and it's from Ekerabong Ruben Michael Akubo. Question: what would you say is the most workable way of getting young people back to the values that you spoke about?
I believe that it begins in the home.
The home.
I believe it begins in the home, in the way we raise our children and what we tell our children. I believe if you begin to teach them from a young age about the dignity in labor, about the need for honesty and integrity, it starts from there. So some of the institutions in society that really help to shape the values of people, the home, the schools, the churches, the mosques, these are institutions that are dedicated to shaping values. So we need to look at those institutions and look at how we can support them to do what they are designed to do. So that, honestly, I believe it starts from there.
I agree with you. It's a home, and that's the basic unit of any society anyway. So that's where society and community emerges from. I agree with you totally. So second question is from Sola Adebayo, and it goes: how do we prevent the recycling of bad leaders, bad leadership?
Sola, That's a tough question, and there's no easy answer to that question. I believe that you and I will have to roll up our sleeves and get stuck in. We have to join political parties. We have to be part of the process of nominating leaders from within political parties. We have to become active voters. We have to become active citizens. And we have to continue to expand the network of citizens that think and share these values and ideals until we become a real progressive force in society. There is no easy answer to that question. We have to keep getting stuck in. And like I said, let's not tie everybody with the same brush. There are already many good leaders in the system. Remember, the system itself has issues that doesn't allow people to function maximally. But there are already many good people in the system. Don't think that everybody in political office is bad, because it's not true. There are good people in the system. What we're trying to do is to increase the mass of good people in the system and to elect them with the mandates. That's a different thing. Elect them, empower them in office to execute these ideas, to follow. Not that when they get into office, you now meet them and start asking them for contracts. They should put you in, help you put your sister here, help you put your brother there. Because even if I'm a good person, if this is what you are bringing to me, I can't deliver. But if I'm in office and you tell me that, look, I'm not interested in contract, what I'm interested in is let the hospital be functional, let the schools be functional, let there be road, let there be water. That's what we want from you. Keep your contract. You'll find that a politician just reflects what the people are asking him or her to do.
Wow. Thank you for that. We have one more question, and it's still from a Bong, and it says, so how do we change this narrative? How do we bring back reality into our conversations? Again, maybe I'll throw something. We didn't touch it. History has been taken out of schools. I don't know whether that has been restored back, and if you're not a child of history, you can be a parent of the future.
Yeah.
So if we try to lock down in, can we have that question again? How do we change the narrative?
Yeah. Well, by what's happening here, having these conversations, more and more of these conversations, people writing, people talking, people singing, all these things contribute to change the overall narrative in society. The arts are a very powerful tool for changing narratives. That's why I'm in the arts sector, because poetry and music and art, because of their ability to touch the heart, they're a very powerful way for changing narratives. So to change the overall narrative, we have to amplify our voices. We all of us who know better need to begin to speak. Don't say, there's no point interjecting into this conversation. Nobody's going. Just speak your own truth. We're in that place in society, in Nigeria's evolution, where everybody should be loud in their voice and speaking their own truth. Because ultimately the truth will prevail, but somebody has to say it. You have to put the truth in contention, so you have to keep saying it and putting it out there. And this will all help cumulatively to change the narrative.
Awesome. Well, so let me ask this question as we begin to bring this conversation to an end. Of all your poems, how many poems have you written?
I don't know. There are many.
There are many, so you can't count them. Now, would you, do you have a favorite one? Or one that you just love by virtue of the words and what it communicates, the lyrics, if you put it that way?
If you see a piece of paper, pick it, make it neater. Make the world a better place with a sweet smile on your face.
Oh.
That's my favorite poem.
And that's a short one.
It's very short. It's to the point.
Very straight to the point. This has truly been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And I'm sure that your mind is really being programmed to think differently and to see hope in our future. There's hope in our future, and there's a future in our hope. And we must not forget that. There's so much we've heard today. We must loud it. Let our voices be heard. We have a desire for this nation. There are expectations we have. And we have a right as citizens to express ourselves and to let those who lead us know that this is what we expect of them and this is what we expect. This is the Nigeria of our dreams, and we must not hold back. Again, part of what we've seen or heard from this conversation is that we must connect with one another, those of us of like minds, and be able to demand for the change that we, desire. Those who lead us must hear our voices. And they may not hear a lone voice, but if we come together, we align ourselves together, and we form a critical mass, then we can move. And the hashtag we move, that can become part of our reality until we let those who lead us realize that we deserve to be governed well. We deserve to be secure. We deserve to be able to pursue our dreams, and we deserve to have our expectations become a reality. We deserve good health care. We deserve freedom of speech. We deserve good educational institutions, infrastructure. We desire a Nigeria that works and delivers the dividends of democracy to each citizen, irrespective of ethnicity and irrespective of the social orientation. Everyone has a right to the best of this country. We deserve the best of Nigeria. So, DK, I'll give you a few minutes to just express your calling and your refined poetic justice, or whatever it is you may want to call it, and just share a poem with us. Some people have put up all kinds of ideas and say, look, why can't DK just talk about this and share this poem? But let's have you just, whatever comes out of your heart. So over to you, DK. Let's hear you express yourself.
Thank you. I'm going to share a poem just commemorating all the lives we've lost in the last couple of years and the sort of gale of insecurity blowing across the country. How much blood must this land drink before it says to us, enough? How many graves must old men dig before the shovel cries out, enough? How many times will a father and mother comfort each other for the loss of their children? How many of these children must die before we say, enough? When Colonel Mohammed Barak left his home, he thought he would come back. But he was stopped on the road between Jos and Bauchi. He was stopped in his car and killed. You see, when Sherifat Adisa left her home, she thought she would come back. But as she tried to run through the streets of Oyo, she was shot in her leg, then killed. Tell me, does the blood of the Muslim mean nothing to the Christian? Is that why one watches while the other is weeping? Does the blood of the Christian mean nothing to the Muslim? Is that why one laughs while the other is weeping? Dantan Isabo, father and husband, killed in broad daylight in Zamfara. Abdurrahman Gambo, first-year student, kidnapped and killed in Kaduna. Oguchi Unachukwu, businessman, killed in front of his family in Imo. Blessing Olajide, 300 level, raped and killed in Kwara. Tell me, does the blood of the northerner mean nothing to the southerner? Is that why one watches while the other is drowning? Does the blood of the southerner mean nothing to the northerner? Is that why one drowns while the other just watches? No. No. Did you not know that what a mother feels when her son is murdered, what a mother feels is pain? Whether she lives in Dansadao, Makodi, or Enugu, what that woman feels is pain. And what a father goes through when his daughter is abducted What a father goes through is madness. Whether he lives in Ibadan, Akwanga, or Chibok, what that man goes through is madness. Not knowing where she is, or how she is, or whether she is at all. Not knowing where to look, or what to think, or how to sleep with his baby gone. Did you not know that who that parent is that must come out in the morning to pick the spot where their child will be buried? Did you not know that who that parent is, east or west, north or south, who that parent is a broken soul? So for today, please ignore my tribal marks and my dialect. Ignore my state of origin and my religion. Ignore my history and my politics, my heritage and my ancestry. For today, for the sake of our humanity, please, just mourn with me. Just stand with me. Just demand with me for a country where the children who go to school in the morning come back in the evening. For a country where the path of the herdsman is not littered with bodies, and the farmer did not sow in soil soaked with blood. For today, please, ignore my food and my fashion. Ignore my music and my poetry. Ignore the name of my hometown or where my village is. For today, please, just ask with me for a nation bound, not in chains, not in fear, not in terrorism, but in freedom, where truth and justice reign, so that our dearly departed, whatever their tribe, whatever their religion, may finally, truly rest in peace. Thank you.
Wow, DK, these are deep words that pierces the soul. And I think that everyone who is glued to the broadcast right now, and for those who would watch it in the future, we do need to have a rethink. And we do need to understand that we are brothers and we must love one another. And if one weeps, we weep. If one is in pain, we all are in pain. Whether they're in Bono, like you said, or whether they're in Ilorin or in Lagos. If there's bleeding in one part of the country, the whole nation bleeds. And if one is crying, the whole nation cries. And I pray that these words we've heard will truly begin to reconfigure our minds and help us to think and to birth a new Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on the set of the conversation. Honestly, it's been an amazing time with you. And I'm sure so many people out there will be saying, when can we have DK back? And I'm sure we will make that work sometime. This has been such an awesome evening. And the broadcast is going to be on the platforms. It remains there consistently. So you can go back there and just listen. Some of the things you thought you heard really didn't stick, and you need to hear it again and again and again. And please copy the link, share it with your friends. This is what needs to get out there. Tonight's conversation is truly a nation molding and redefining conversation. And I trust that you would do this. Well, from Sola Adesoye and DK, have a wonderful evening. God bless you.
Thank you.
And we look forward to you joining us on the conversation again.
Someone said that when you make peaceful change impossible, you make violent change inevitable. You see, the increase in violence today is a symptom of a government that is not working. You see, the violence is growing because they refuse to listen to the truth. It has, like a cancer, metastasized, and it's not getting better. There are still superior ideas. and superior technology to deploy in this. It is sad that the government has gone this way to try to discredit any voice of dissent of correction. You are heading for disaster. A small minority of 0.01% cannot enforce their will on 200 million people.
The conversation keeps you in touch with the realities of life, links you with the greatest minds around the world, and leaves you better off than when you joined it. Don't miss it for anything. Join the conversation bi-monthly on the social media channels showing on your screen.